Assalamu alaikum. This is Maruf Khan from 1A Chemical Section B. My roll number is 64 and the topic of my presentation is air pollution control technologies. First of all, let us discuss what actually air pollution is. If we come to the main definition, then it is said that all the substances that linger in the air, either they be solid particles or gaseous particles, that cause destruction to the ecosystem are said to be the pollutants in the air, and this process can be said as air pollution. Some substances that cause pollution in the air are mentioned here. The gaseous substances include gases such as ammonia, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxides, methane, and the solid particles include both organic and inorganic particles and even the biological molecules. Now after this slide, I am to discuss that what measures should be taken to decrease the amount of pollution in air. Now as there are two types of contaminants in the air, solids and the gaseous contents, so the control strategies should also be divided into two. One is in which the solid particles can be removed, and the other is the one in which the gaseous pollutants can be removed. So first we are talking about the equipments that are used to remove the solid particles. They are written here as settling chambers, cyclone collectors, impingers, wet scrubbers, electrostatic precipitators, and filtration devices. These all devices are used to decrease the solid pollutants from the air. Settling chambers. The settling chambers are very long chambers that have a very large cross-sectional area. These chambers use gravity as a source of reducing the content of solid particles in the air. So look at the figure. What happens here is that the air passes from the inlet towards the chamber. Now as the air enters into the chamber, the velocity of the air decreases, and as the velocity of the air decreases, the gravity acts on the particles inside the air, and the particles tries to settle down to the bottom of the chamber, and as a result of this, a clean air is obtained from the outlet. Now this process totally depends on the gravitational force. Moving on to the next slide. The second device I am going to discuss is a cyclone collector. Now consider this figure. The cyclone collector consists of a conical section and a cyclone body, and because of this, as the air enters into the collector, it moves into circular motion, and because of the circular motions, it produces the centrifugal force, and that centrifugal force sucks all the particles inside the air and sticks them to the walls of the collector, and because of this, a clean air can be obtained from the from a tube towards in the upward direction. Moving on to the next slide. The next device which I am to share is known as the wet scrubbers. The wet scrubbers control particulate emissions by wetting the particles in order to enhance their removal from the airstream. Now look at this figure. What happens in this figure is that the air enters from the side into the container, and the air moves in the upward directions, while a scrubbing solution enters into the container from the top to the bottom. What happens here is that the scrubbed solution takes all the particles from the gases and settles them to the bottom of the container, and the gas then flows from the downward to the upward. And that gas is known as a clean gas, because all the particles are dissolved into the scrubbing solution in the bottom of the container. Electrostatic precipitators. The electrostatic precipitators are used to remove very fine dusty particles from the air. They work by forming electric charges on the particles. First of all, the dusty air is passed from the electrodes and then the particles in the air form ions. They form positive and negative charges, and then those ions get attached to the electrode plates, and the rest of the clean air is filtered, and then we obtain that air as the pollution free air. Now the electrostatic precipitators are mostly used in the power stations where fossil fuel is burned. The burning of fossil fuel produce smoke that contains soot, and that soot must be removed because that soot can cause harm to the human being, as well as it can cause harm to the buildings and the environment. The electrostatic precipitators are used very oftenly for this purpose. A filtration device. A very interesting fact is that the filtration device is considered as the most oldest ways of removing particulates from a gas, but till now it is considered as the most efficient ways. I'm gonna tell you about the bag filter, which is also known as a baghouse filter or a fabric filter. It works actually to remove particulates or gas released from commercial processes out of air. A plus point is that it is much cheaper than any other particulate control device. Consider this diagram. Now, this diagram consists of a tube sheet. To this tube sheet are attached some bag filters. These bag filters consist of a supporting cage. This supporting cage strengthens the bag filters. What happens here is that the particulated air enters from this port inside the chamber, and the air moves as the air moves through the filters. The filter retains the particulates and let the air move out of the chamber, and that air consists of very less amount of particulates. This picture shows the representation of the bag filters, which are mostly used in the industries. In the previous slides, I explained that how solid particles are removed from the air, and now I am going to discuss the devices that are used to remove the gaseous pollutants from the air. Some of these devices include scrubbers, absorption systems, condenser, etc. First, let us talk about scrubber. In the scrubber that are used to remove unwanted gases from the air, simply an absorption technique is used. What happens in the absorption technique is that the air moves through a solid bed, and the pollutants which we want to remove stick to the solid bed, or more precisely absorbed on the solid bed. The solid bed used in the scrubber is usually an activated carbon. The activated carbon acts as the adsorbent, and the common examples of the scrubbers include the fixed bed and the fluidized bed adsorbers. Not only absorption, but an absorption technique is also used to remove the gases from the air. What happens in the absorption technique is that in the absorption technique, a solution is added to the air, and that solution absorbs all the unwanted gaseous particles. The examples of absorption scrubbers are the spray towers, the pack towers, and the venturi scrubbers. The solutions which can be used in the scrubber, or they can be called as the absorbing agents, they are mostly the lime magnesium oxide and sodium hydroxide. The second device which I am going to describe is the condenser. So the general function of a condenser is to convert a gas into a liquid by decreasing its temperature. For removing the unwanted gases from the air, we use two types of condensers. One is the surface condenser and the other is the direct contact condenser. Now here in the surface condenser, as the air passes through this condenser, a coolant is introduced into the condenser, and the vapors of the unwanted gases start to condense on these metal tubes while the coolant is introduced inside the metal tubes. As a result, we collect all the condensates, which are the liquids of the unwanted gases, and we release the clean air which is without the air pollutants. The other type is the direct contact condenser. This condenser also works on the same principle, but the main difference is that in this condenser the condensate and the coolant come into direct contact with each other. In this condenser the coolant is sprayed onto the gas directly uh, rather than like in the surface condenser the coolant was passed through the tubes. It passes it it is sprayed onto the air. Now as a result of this, the condensate is discharged from the bottom of this condenser, and the gas is received from the upper outlet of the condenser. Moving on to the next slide. Everyone knows that air is very important for human beings. We use it every second to breathe, not only for humans, it is also important for the plants. Now is the generation of technology. Industries, power generation systems, vehicles are the need of this era, but they also cause a lot of pollution in our air. For this, it should be necessary to use every technique to make our environment better so that we can live a healthy lifestyle. This is all I wanted to say. Thank you so much, and Allah Hafiz.